All right, it is Thursday, April 3rd. Doug Kyde is here, the people's guest, my guy, at the Boston Herald. Joe Milton is not here because Joe Milton is no longer a New England Patriot. He got traded this morning. We talked with Josh McDaniels this afternoon, and in between, I asked for a bunch of mailbag questions. So that's what we're doing today. Doug, I know we're aligned on the Joe Milton discourse, which has exploded, much like it feels like certain receivers' fingers do when they catch a pass from Joe Milton. I don't particularly want to start there because I think for the folks that disagree with us, we're going to persuade some of them, but they'll also be a little upset at the way that we view this trade. So I want to start with Josh McDaniels, the prodigal Patriot for a second time coming back. Spoke for 15 minutes today. We met the offensive assistants. You listen to Josh. I listen to Josh. Your chief takeaway was what?
That he seems to be happy, at least from what he's saying, with what they've put together as an offensive staff, and that they're willing to change some things based on, or he's willing to change some things about his offense based on the guys that he'll be working with. I mean, this is an offensive staff that he has no experience working with. Obviously, now they've spent a ton of time together over the last 2 months, but he was asked about terminology. He was asked about strategy, and they're going to cater the offense to Drake May and the rest of the offensive players. And they're even going to tweak some of the terminology so that everyone coaching this offense feels comfortable. So those were my primary takeaways. The other one was that Josh McDaniels said that he's smitten by Drake May, which I just really loved that turn of phrase by Josh McDaniels. But that's kind of a secondary takeaway because I think we can all assume that Josh McDaniels is excited to work with Drake May. But I think that any tweaks to this offense should be welcomed, even though things have worked out really well with Josh McDaniels in New England. I do think some modernizing of the offense could help, and bringing in guys that he's not used to working with could push that along.
Yes, and I think it's a really interesting point that they're at as they converge and meet on things, like you said, terminology. They have to all speak the same language. The concepts that they decide that they want to use. And Ashton Grant, who's the new quarterbacks coach, came from the Browns. Vrabel knew him there, but before that worked with AVP and TC McCartney. By the way, crashed, had a week-long sleepover at AVP's house when he moved here to New England, and since been going to Dunkin' Donuts with Josh McDaniels every day, said that they're keeping Drake May's footwork. So this is not lip service of honeymoon period. Of course, I'll meet you halfway. Yeah, we'll compromise. Well, I'll watch whatever movie you want to watch on a Friday night, go over to a restaurant. They're doing things actually to help the players right away. They haven't worked with them. Where Josh says, we haven't talked football yet. And every one of my mentions, at least, is going, well, why the hell not? You can't do that officially. But there's evidence here that they are actually willing to adjust in what Josh said, which also is what came to my mind as far as it's one thing to talk about adjustments. But Vrabel kind of hinted at this on Monday, right? When he was talking about Todd Downing and Thomas Brown being involved as passing game coordinator and then the senior most offensive assistant when it came to the passing game in Downing.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Todd Downing, I talked to him a little bit today about transitioning over to wide receivers coach, which I think is interesting because he's never done that before. But he said that as long as you're teaching, you should be able to coach whatever position as long as you like to teach. He said he's not going to be, gaining any YouTube views from the crazy footwork, route drills. He's going to be teaching the wide receivers, but he's going to teach his wide receivers how to get open quickly in a smart way that will benefit quarterbacks, because that's who Todd Downing is, most used to at this point, working with his quarterbacks, but he's also worked with tight ends in the past. So I think that, it remains to be seen what that will look like on the field, but certainly sounds like Todd Downing is taking the right approach on that. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a 100% carryover for Drake May or a 100% change for Drake May, but Josh McDaniels even said that, at least with the terminology aspect, they're going to be using the Men in Black memory eraser to erase everything that he remembered from Alex Van Pelt, at least terminology wise. And I don't know, it also remains to be seen how well young wide receivers will be able to grasp Josh McDaniels' offense, because he was asked about that today. He said, it wasn't all bad. Some guys could certainly learn the offense, and that's absolutely true. Obviously, Robert Gronkowski, Julian Edelman, a lot of guys had a lot of success, but there were also a lot of young wide receivers who really struggled to learn the Patriots offense under Josh McDaniels. I think some of that had to do with Tom Brady. Maybe some of that had to do with Bill Belichick. So it wasn't all a Josh McDaniels thing. But that's just another thing that we don't know at this point. Like, everyone's saying the right things, obviously, but until they actually get on the field and we see what Jalen Polk looks like, we see what Javon Baker looks like, we see what any rookie wide receiver they add looks like in the offense, we don't know for sure if this is going to be easier for young players to pick up than it was in the past for the Patriots.
Yes, and we should know that when asked about that directly, the question started not from you or I. Hey, a lot of young players couldn't pick up your system, Josh. By the way, welcome back. He was like,
right. I mean, it's fair though. Like, it's something that's worth asking, because there are, like, you've got Stephon Diggs, you got Kendrick Bourne, you got Mac Hollins, but otherwise, it's a lot of young wide receivers in this offense. And Kayshon Boutte and Demario Douglas have more production than Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, but there's no guarantee necessarily that they will be able to pick up a new offense as easily. Their third offense in 3 years for Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte.
No, it is totally fair. And I think that's where I talked about this Tuesday with Curran when we were all down at Palm Beach, to say Vrabel hinting at, hey, Thomas Brown and Todd Downing will have different ideas of how to teach certain things, where Josh has only been in this system, been in this coaching tree, and those are the only people that he's worked with who are thinking in the same way. Now that he's surrounded by assistants, literally zero assistants he's worked with before. So far, it sounds good with Ashton Grant. That kind of stuff will help him to either streamline it, repackage it. And he spent last year, as he told us today, visiting NFL teams, visiting college teams. That experience and exposure seems to have helped him. I was a little bit more curious how getting fired in the middle of a season for the second time in your career might make you reflect interpersonally about how you kind of conduct your business. But maybe that's for another interview for another day. The other thing that I wanted to hit on as far as McDaniels goes is, the idea that this passing game in the system is kind of TBD. I don't fully buy that. Like, the bones of this offense are going to be what we saw last time. And what a lot of teams running game should be a little bit outside zone, some power, counter. And Ashton Grant, who's the quarterback's coach, Thomas Brown, pass game coordinator, I asked, hey, what's the pass game going to look like? Grant said fluid. Brown was like, we'll see when we get on the field. I get that. Right. You're also not throwing 50-50 balls and corner fades to Pop Douglas. Like, if you had to guess what this will look like beyond what we last saw, do you have any inkling, or do you actually think that this is fluid and they're going to kind of figure it out as they go?
I mean, I think a lot of it's going to probably resemble, like, the core of it is still going to resemble what Josh McDaniels has always done, but I think they will cater to their offensive strengths. I think that Drake May obviously changes things quite a bit, where, like, he's not Tom Brady, but he's also not Cam Newton, and he's certainly not Mac Jones. So it is a completely different quarterback than we're used to seeing Josh McDaniels work with, especially here in New England. But he's also different than the quarterbacks that Josh McDaniels worked with the Raiders. And, like, I don't want to pump up Drake May too much, but is it fair to say that he's the most complete quarterback that Josh McDaniels has worked with? Like, obviously Tom Brady is the best. Tom Brady is, like, the best quarterback that Josh McDaniels will ever work with. But I only say Drake May is the most complete simply because he's a better passer than Cam Newton was at that stage of his career. And he's much more athletic than Tom Brady or Jimmy Garoppolo or Mac Jones or Matt Castle or any of those other guys.
I don't think it's fair to say most complete. I mean, the athleticism, as we found out, is not like
most diverse skill set, I guess. Then I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think the idea is that he unlocks more potential schematically. Like, you could run a wider playbook with Drake May than you could, from a physical standpoint, than you could Tom Brady. Like, you could run anything with Brady conceptually at whatever speed and tempo and pace you want, whatever personnel packaging, because he just had the encyclopedic memory of everything he had done over a 20-whatever-year career. But with Drake May, he's still learning. Once he does get enough kind of competency level mastery, that's when you go, okay, we can boot with him in the way you couldn't with Tom Brady. Certainly not Mac Jones. You can make certain throws that you couldn't with the two of those guys. Which, again, this all comes off as like, oh, Brady had shortcomings. No one's dismissing Tom Brady. I'm just saying I understand where you're coming from. And for McDaniels, he's in a new world. Let's put it this way. There's nothing he can't draw up that Drake May theoretically couldn't at least try. Whether or not that becomes a go-to is what I think the fluid part is.
Yeah, because there's just more aspects of the offense that Josh McDaniels could unlock with Drake May in there. And I think they can borrow from some of the things that they were doing in 2020 with Cam Newton, with like a higher rate of play action, a lot of designed runs. I don't know if we'll see as many designed runs for Drake May as we did with Cam Newton, just because like Cam Newton's skill set kind of necessitated all of those design runs because his passing game was a lot more limited. So I think that we'll see less design runs from Drake May, but I also think we'll see a lot more than we did last year under Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo when they were playing so conservatively with Drake May. So yeah, I think it is fluid what the offense will look like, but they've got to have some idea. I think the big aspect here is that the offense also isn't completely full at this point. Like they still don't have a left tackle. I know that like having and not having a left tackle doesn't necessarily like change the offense, but they could still add, like if they draft Ashton Gentry number 4 overall, which I'm not saying they're going to, or if it's even a possibility, but like if they do that, then that massively changes things about their offense and probably their passing attack as well. So there are still definitely changes that can be made before they actually start having to put a real offense together.
Yeah, and to their point about like we do need to see the guys on the field and what they can do with this offense. Well, first of all, you need something to teach them, right? It's not just you get out there, let's try this. You've got concepts, you got names, you got things to build off of it, compliments. But let's say DeMario Douglas, for example, just cannot pick up the new offense, or he's not the same player, whatever the case is. You are not building the same system you had with an Edelman, with a Welker, Amendola for stretches, even Jacoby Myers is like a bigger slot. You might go to 2 tight ends because Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper are not going to have trouble with this offense. Hunter Henry played in it. Austin Hooper did when he was in Vegas. Like these guys have been around the block. Call it whatever you want. As he said, apple or tomato, different concepts. They know it's a fruit. So I get that part. And to your point, whether it is a skill player or not will depend on what they feature. I like the idea of the Cam Newton offense coming back a little bit with the designed runs and the play action. But the last time I said that, they then signed Stephon Diggs, and I look like an idiot. So I'm not going to co-sign that anymore, which was like a few weeks ago. To the point about the left tackle, you and I did not talk to Doug Marrone, as all the other offensive assistants, again, talked today. But in seeing some of his comments, he talked about Armand Membu. And he was asked, hey, is that a guy you could flip as a college right tackle, super athletic? Let him play left. That's a guy right now I would go with it for. And he brought up Jamal Brown, which is a 20-year, very dusty example when he was with the Saints in 2006. And that guy flipped from right to left and then became an all-pro. Doug Marrone, I think, is a really key character here moving forward, not just a talent here. What do you want to see, if anything, or hear from him moving forward that would tell you that they finally got an appreciable upgrade at their offensive line coach?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's got to be a willingness to modernize his coaching a little bit, just because of some of the things we've heard in the past, that he is kind of an old school, hard-nosed type of guy. But they did bring in Jason Houteling, who could bring in more of a modern approach. They still have Robert Kugler from last year. So I think that all of those guys working together do have a lot of experience and should be, an upgrade over what they had last year. The Membu thing, I'm not going to lie, it scares me a little bit to go into a second straight season being like, yeah, we can flip that guy from right to left. Like, and I know that like it's an imperfect, like you can't say it's a 1-to-1 scenario, because they were trying to do that with Caden Wallace, who was a 3rd-round pick, and they're trying to do it with Chuks Okorafor, who had played right tackle for 6 years, whatever it was in the NFL. But it feels scary to say, like, because it's maybe not as much of an outlier as it is with Will Campbell, where you're like, all right, we're taking this guy with a 77-inch wingspan, 33-inch arms, and hoping he fits at left tackle, because there's no real proof that can work. Guys have flipped from right tackle to left tackle, but it's tough for some guys. And I don't love having to make that projection for a second straight year with the 4th overall pick. And like, I know that there's not a lot of better options for you there at left tackle, but if that doesn't work and you take Membu at number 4 overall and you can't even put him at right tackle because Morgan Moses is there, then like, that's as big of a potential whiff as it is taking Will Campbell and he has to move to left guard. Like, at least if you take Campbell and he has to move to left guard, at least there's not someone there. Like, at least you can still start him at that spot. With Membu, like, I don't know. It's scary to me to force a guy to flip to a position that he hasn't played in college.
All right, this is a heat check take, which I said on TV last night, but it's still formulating. I'm going to throw it at you now because I don't think you've heard me say this. I would comfortably, if I'm the Patriots, go Membu at 4 for now. This is not in pen. And then still jump back into the first round and give me Josh Simmons. Like, I want them to have as many bodies and answers at tackle. I am sick of talking about the tackle position. I am sick of looking at this and calling it a black hole or a revolving door or a position they need to fill. Like, give me as many guys that you can throw there and rotate and eventually develop, because we talk about Morgan Moses. Every single time I say his name, I want to say Moses Morgan. Morgan Moses is 34 years old. In terms of banking on 34-year-old tackles, that wasn't last year. It was the year before with Riley Reif, and there are important distinctions to make. But the point is, this is a short and long-term need. Is 2 first-round tackles too nuts?
I don't love it because especially like, I know this isn't the exact regime that just did this, but like you did take Caden Wallace last year. And like, I think Elliot Wolf said this publicly. He said that Caden Wallace's best position is right tackle, right? He said that on air.
Yes, but he also thought he could be a swing tackle and then had the feet to play guard.
Right. But like, you have, I think that in an ideal situation, you have Morgan Moses playing right tackle this year, and then Caden Wallace takes it over in the next 2 years, let's say. Like, so I would probably feel more comfortable, let's say, taking a tackle at 4 overall than waiting until like the 3rd round to take the next one, because you've got 2 picks there. Yes. I think that there are other major needs on this team. Like, you still do need help at wide receiver. You do still need help at center. You do still need help at, like, maybe even more so than those, pass rusher and cornerback. So I don't love taking 2 tackles in the 1st round just because, like, you do have to field other positions. Like, and I know that the other ones are in better shape, but it feels like too much draft capital. And it also feels like you're not trusting your process there at number 4 if you also have to jump back into the 1st round to take another guy. I think that you have to be comfortable enough with that guy at number 4 to say, like, this is our left tackle. He is going to be our left tackle for the next 8 years.
Well, I think that does speak to part of the uncertainty. I would argue that when I propose this, again, very off the cuff, this is not to be cut and clipped and aggregated. I will say crazy shit often enough, crazier than this, if you just want to wait to cut and clip. But the point is, I'm not comfortable enough with Vidarian Lowe. I'm not comfortable enough with Caden Wallace at left tackle. And so I do love and have come to love, this is not something I would have said a month ago when I had watched less of him, Armand Membu, but it is the short and the long term of this position where I just don't think, when you look around the league, there are teams that are just completely comfortable with their offensive line depth. And when you're at the bottom of the league in run blocking, 2nd worst in pass protection, you need as many available solutions to you as possible. That's why I look at this and go, yeah, it's a little bit nuts. And then you would have to wait till the 3rd round where you have 2 picks and you'd have to package 1 to move up from the 2nd to get back into the 1st, provided Josh Connerly doesn't, slip to 38, that then you really need to nail that receiver pick or whatever it might be that you're talking about, pass rusher, even though it's a deep defensive line class. And that to me would be the risk, is that you are so comfortable in Harold Landry bouncing back and Kairos Tonga, who's also your 3rd defensive tackle, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't even mention defensive tackle, yeah.
Right, panning out. And we'll get to the needs a little bit later.
Here's one other thing I don't like about it, and not to shit completely on your point, but like, I don't know. Like, do you really want to take 2 offensive tackles in the 1st round in a weak offensive tackle class? Like, I think that there is, like, since it's considered a weak class, take 1, but then maybe wait till next year to take the next one. Don't keep reaching to that well when it's already a bad class.
Well, I think the class is not particularly strong in terms of the depth. Like, if you're going to go get the guys. Like, this is a situation where Josh Simmons, before the injury, was tracking to be a top 15 pick.
Right.
Regardless. And there's some supposed character stuff, which I don't know. They could figure out. Vrabel at Ohio State has a connection to determine whether it's BS from anonymous scouts or not. But again, in this very still forming take, this fetal take, that I just think the position is so bad that if you really want to guarantee yourself, because the other thing is, I don't feel as comfortable with Will Campbell. Like, that's the deal at the top. But the guys in the middle, you don't want to cross your fingers and wait at 38 like you did last year at 34. Oh, and then the guys that you want are gone because someone came up for Xavier Legette.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of trading up. I don't want to sit back and hope that the guy lasts for you. I also will say that Yeah, I think that the Patriots will be willing to take on some character concerns. The Isaiah Wilson pick that the Titans made when Vrabel was there does scare me a little bit because that was about as big of a whiff as anyone could possibly have with a draft pick. And
Disastrous.
I would say that that was clearly made with the idea that like we can bring this guy in the first round and fix him, and it didn't happen. So that would scare me a little bit, taking on a character concern, hoping that you can turn things around. And I'm not saying that Josh Simmons is Isaiah Wilson by any means. I have no idea what the level of those concerns are, but that would give me some pause, some hesitation.
Okay, we are going to pause, take a quick break. When we come back, you and I are not lukewarm or hesitant about how we feel about the Joe Milton trade, which is just, I don't know, taking over Twitter for a day. We'll be right back.
Enough about free agency. Enough about the draft. No more mocks, no more rumors, no more whispers, no more mailbag. It is time to talk, not about football or anything like that. PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, because when I'm not on this podcast and I'm sitting at home and I'm watching the Celtics, or it could be a hockey game, or it could be a baseball game. Sox are just around the corner. I am playing PrizePicks and I am winning. And I would like you, as someone who supports this podcast, to win a little bit too. Because right now at PrizePicks, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash and run your game all season long. When you build your lineup, you know the deal. 2 to 6 players, all right? Every single time you go to PrizePicks, online or on the app, you'll see a player and they'll have a stat. And all you have to do with your lineup is pick the player, go more or less on that stat. It could be Jason Tatum, 5 threes. If you think he'll hit him more than 5 threes, he's going to hit more. If you think Kristaps Porzingis will have less than 18 points, hit less. Boom. That's a lineup right there. So 2 to 6 player stat projections over at PrizePicks. Basketball, hockey, baseball around the corner. Of course, football will be back too. And when you sign up today, if you're a new customer, here's the best part. You get $50. 50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus 50. You just have to play. So sign up today, download the app, and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today, and you will get $50 instantly with the promo code CLNS after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
All right, the people have been waiting long enough. Joe Milton was traded with a 7th-round pick at number 217 to Dallas. The Cowboys send back pick number 171. So the Patriots jump up 46 spots, trading their backup quarterback. There was some initial reporting that I go, if this is true, the Patriots let Joe Milton pick his destination and pass up better offers. This is something they have to stop doing because it's just ridiculous that you would extend that courtesy to a 6th-round backup quarterback. Albert Breer has since reported that the Cowboys offer was their only offer. So I want to be clear. Moving forward in this conversation, the Cowboys were the only team to offer the Patriots something solid. What that was what they accepted. A pick swap trade that is nets about a 6th-round pick, according to the modern trade value charts. And so you take Joe Milton in the 6th round last year, you have him for a year, and you get another 6th-round pick in return. What did you make of this deal?
Well, I mean, I've been saying a 5th-round pick for Joe Milton since the end of the season. So like, this was not a surprise whatsoever to me. I'm not saying that everyone was like, should have been listening to me all along and shouldn't have been surprised by this, but like in my personal experience, I was like, yeah, if you could flip him for an earlier pick than you took him last year, then like, yeah, that's fine. Because I understand Patriots fans being excited about Joe Milton based on the one game last season, week 18, but this was a older quarterback who was taken in the 6th round, who struggled at Michigan, had a good few games at Tennessee in 2023, but largely struggled in 2024. He was obviously not highly thought of coming out of Tennessee. That's why he lasted until the 6th round. So last year's regime, if it was still Gerard Mayo and Alex Van Pelt and TC McCartney, maybe they would have been excited about Joe Milton. But since now it's Mike Vrabel and it's Josh McDaniels and it's Ashton Grant and it's Ryan Cowden and different guys inside the building, I'm not shocked whatsoever that they're saying, all right, I don't think he's going to be a great backup quarterback. I don't think he's going to be doing the work that Jacoby Brissett did and that Joshua Dobbs would do, which means that he might only be the 3rd stringer here. If he has a bad preseason, then we might have to just outright cut the guy. Let's trade him. He wants out, like whatever. Let's trade him. Let's trade him for a 5th-round pick. And we wound up taking a guy and upgrading the pick a year later. Is it a ton? No. Do we have to throw in a 7th-round pick? Sure. but we're getting something, and maybe we can use that pick as draft capital to move around the board a little bit. Or maybe we take another quarterback in the 7th round and hope to do this again the next year. But like, there's no example of a guy playing one game as a rookie and then being traded for really anything more than this. So that's why I'm not surprised by it. And could they have kept him? Sure. But I don't know that he could have raised his value any more this season. There's a part, like, this is probably the highest his value was going to be in a New England Patriots uniform, because I just don't think he would have gotten that opportunity again to show that last year was for real.
No, there's one quarterback that gets to be on the field. That quarterback was never going to be Joe Milton. The only reason they put Joe Milton on the field last year was when they wanted to lose a football game. And kudos to him for winning that football game, which, let's be clear, was a preseason game in January. The Bills put in their starter for one drive. Goodbye, Josh Allen. They put in their backup, Mitch Trubisky, for a couple quarters. They pulled him too. They had third stringers on the field, as did the Patriots. This was a preseason game in January, and Joe Milton played very well. But the book on Joe Milton still consists mostly of what he did in college, when he was a 6-year player, including 3 years at Michigan, transferred to Tennessee, couldn't beat out Hendon Hooker, and then had 2 decent seasons, but even still in this like rinky-dink, basic tempo-based offense in Tennessee, one word and go play calls, he completed 64% of his passes, and he is so fun to watch. Yeah. I actually enjoyed that finale way more than I thought I would. Him moving around, running around, chucking bombs, that's great. It was not good enough for him to get picked in the top 192 draft picks last year. That's what the league thought of him. And when only one team comes in to say, yeah, we'll give you something for Joe Milton, that tells you they don't only just think he's not a starter, which Joe does, and he can do that. Feel free to do that. Wishing the best for Joe. They don't even think he's a top-tier backup. Neither did the Patriots. Right. We're moving forward with Drake May, that one quarterback who is going to play, and Josh Dobbs, who knows what he is, knows how to help a guy like Drake May, and will know some of the system and the coaches he's working with, which Drake May doesn't. That value as a backup quarterback is what you can do to help the starter. Joe Milton can't offer, as crazy as this sounds, what Josh Dobbs did and will. And that's why he's gone.
Yeah. And I mean, there's an example of this. Someone tweeted me saying, like, why would the Cowboys give up, or like, why were the Patriots only able to get a 5th round pick for Joe Milton when the Cowboys gave up a 4th round pick for Trey Lance? It's like, because as much as you might hate it, like, priors matter in this league, and prior opinions on players matter a ton. And Trey Lance was the number 3 overall pick. And if he wasn't the number 3 overall pick, he still likely would have been taken in the top, let's say, like 10 to 15 picks in that draft, because people thought highly enough about him coming out of North Dakota State. And it doesn't really matter that Trey Lance is not a good quarterback, nor does it matter that he hasn't had as good of a game as Joe Milton. Priors matter. And the fact that no team, like you said, was willing to take Joe Milton before the 192nd overall pick means that they still like go back to their scouting evaluations and say, like, these are all the reasons that we did not like him coming out of Tennessee enough to take him in the first 5 rounds. Sure, he might have proved he had fixed some of those things in that last game against the Bills, but they're also being realistic and saying, like, that was a game the Bills were not trying to win. They were possibly actively trying to lose. Like, they were like doing bits in that game. They were giving their punter their incentives. They were giving James Cook their incentives. They were running as simple of a defense as they possibly could. And like, I would say that when we were at the combine and we would talk to people around the team about, like, oh, people are throwing out tweets about getting a 3rd round pick for Joe Milton. Like, eyes were being rolled about it. Like, that was not a realistic situation. And obviously reporters can do whatever they want. They can cite whoever they want. They can quote whoever they want. But I do think that people throwing out this like 3rd round pipe dream that you could get for Joe Milton really falsely raised expectations for Patriots fans about what they could get for him. And maybe a subset of Patriots fans would have been disappointed in this return anyway, and would have been hyped about Joe Milton based on what he did in week 18. But for me, and I'm completely willing to be wrong on this, I do not think that what we saw of Joe Milton in week 18 is going to be accurate to what we see for the rest of his career. I just truly don't believe it.
No. And he played, again, exceedingly well in that game. Exceeded all expectations. And too bad it was the opposite result of what the Patriots also wanted in a tank-off. But going back to your point about the Cowboys and Trey Lance, yes, priors matter. Like your draft status, even 4 or 5 years later, when you sign a second contract, is paralleled to guys who were drafted in the first round or third, or if you were undrafted, that's the framework. That's how the league works. I would also say, how did it go for Trey Lance in Dallas? Did the Cowboys look like geniuses for offering a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance? No. So why are we asking, why didn't the Cowboys give more? Well, why were they the only team offering this? And this isn't to dump on Joe Milton, who's been on the show. It was a delight to cover in the few conversations that we had on and off the record. Like, I truly wish the best for him. It was exceptionally fun to watch him play football. But you're absolutely spot on. This notion that suddenly you would get a 3rd-round pick for a guy who's 25, had played 1 year, and only played because his team wanted to lose and thought Joe Milton gave them the best chance to lose, is not going to suddenly get a 3rd-round pick. Or a 4th-round pick. A 5th-round pick was always the high bar. And what they did was they got the pick back basically in this net value. And some of the trade charts differ, but you look at Jimmy Johnson's, Rich Hill's is the one that I default to because they update that. That tells you how the league sees these picks after every single trade. Would tell you, they got a 6th-round pick. It's a little bit higher than 193, where Joe went a year ago. In return, that's fine business. It's a new coach. It's a new regime. He's gone. I'm sorry for everyone who had false expectations, but this is always where it was going to go. And I'm so glad, by the way, that what Jordan Schultz reported, at least according to Albert Breer, was not true. And I would take Albert's reporting over Jordan's in this, that they just let Joe Milton pick where they wanted to go and took a lesser offer. Because you should not do that for a 6th-round pick after his rookie season.
No, 100%. And I would just say, in general, once again, might be wrong about this, but usually if there's a trade between the Cowboys and another team, you should probably side with the other team, because the Trey Lance trade for a 4th-round pick did not work out. The trade that they made last year with the Panthers for Jonathan Mingo, probably not going to work out. The Cowboys do have a way of overpaying, and it is telling that, according to Albert Breer, the Cowboys were the only team being we'll give up something for Joe Milton, because that's just kind of the way that they operate. And usually it seems like these things really don't work out for them when they trade more for a player than other teams are willing to give up.
Yeah. Never mind that Jerry Jones at the owners' meetings said something so asinine for a GM and owner, even though it's funny. And it's asinine in a business sense that he's negotiating with Micah Parsons, who a couple years ago, Bill O'Brien called a top 5 player in the NFL. Whether you agree or not, he's in the neighborhood. Okay. He says, we got all the framework and the money and the terms and yada, yada worked out. This doesn't concern the agent. I don't even know who Micah Parsons' agent's name is. Hey, pal, that's the guy you're going to negotiate with. And Micah Parsons now got emboldened and quote tweeted saying, I'm not doing any negotiating with David Mulugheta, who, by the way, is the president of Athletes First, one of the most powerful agencies in all of the NFL, who does excellent deals, even for bad clients who don't have a ton of leverage. Example A being Deshaun Watson getting a fully guaranteed ridiculous deal with another ownership group that makes you scratch your head. So the point being, again, the Cowboys' judgment is not to be taken so soundly. I'm not saying they were wrong to take the risk on Joe Milton, but the idea that he will play a game again against a full starting defense like he did the last time we saw him on a football field, I'm with you. I doubt it. All right, you ready to get
I also love this novel concept by Jerry Jones of what if we negotiate with the player rather than the agent? What if we negotiate the guy who doesn't know what he's doing rather than the agent? It's that's a great idea, but when you're publicly calling out the agent, I'm pretty sure he's going to be yo, Micah, don't accept this deal. I have to be part of this. And I know that Bill Belichick has done similar things in the past with players, trying to negotiate with a player rather than the agent. So it does work out sometimes to the advantage of the team, but Bill Belichick also isn't bragging about that to the media when he tries to do it. I think he tries to play it close to the vest, as close as humanly possible, for a reason.
Yeah, I'm not going to air out my private tactics to one of the most powerful players in the entire league, represented by one of the most powerful agents. And this isn't to say to just capitulate when you're up against a good agent. But even you look at Dak Prescott's contract, if we really just want to go in on the Cowboys here for a second, they guaranteed in his first extension that Dak could never be franchised for the rest of his career. What that did would eliminate all of the Cowboys' leverage when it came to his second contract. And then Dak gets paid out in a way that has all of their fans, even those that like Dak Prescott, going, this is an overpay. This is ridiculous.
Right.
And the Cowboys granted him that no tag clause. Okay, you have to go soon, so let's fly through these, which means not as fast as I always promise, but we'll start and go anyway. Carlos.
No, I've got a little more time. I've got time.
Okay, all right. We have, I think, about 8 to 10 here. Carlos, what order would you personally rank the Patriots' positions of need? You kind of did this earlier. Also, would you draft those positions in the same order?
So I would have left tackle number 1. I think even after adding Diggs, I probably still have wide receiver number 2. I would have edge number 3, defensive tackle number 4, cornerback number 5, and then you kind of get into like, I don't know, I guess
Center.
and then maybe guard, and then like interior offensive line after that. Because at least you have Bradbury for now. At cornerback, I think there's still some question about like, and we'll get into this in a little bit, about like what your nickel looks like at cornerback. I wouldn't necessarily draft them in that order though, but I off the top of my head, I think that's how I'm ordering things.
I'm mostly with you. I would still go left tackle. But let's be clear too. When we rank these, sometimes there can be a giant gap between 1 and 2, which I would suggest right now, just given how bad things are at left tackle.
Left tackle is far and away number 1.
And then 2 and 3 are like 2A and 2B. So when we rank these, they're not all on the same level, or some of them are, and others are big gaps. So left tackle number 1 by a mile. I would agree that receiver is number 2. I think defensive tackle for me, because your third guy is Kyrus Tonga and Christian Barmore, even if, let's say, he completely clears and gets healthy and you feel like you can bring him back, I just can't bank on the blood clots as an amateur, doesn't have a ton of information, not recurring. And I've heard from someone with the team that they're optimistic and they're going as slow as possible. But if Christian Barmore is out of the picture, you might argue defensive tackle, then leaps receiver. So whether it's because of the depth or Barmore status, I would put that at 3, go edge 4. Then to me, there's a drop off because I don't mind Alex Austin as my third outside corner, but nickel is up there. And I like Marcus Jones, but from a injury history standpoint, the way we know he doesn't fit into what they want to do and he's still around, we'll talk about him more later. That to me is how I would order them. And guard and center will be in there. Like, they're going to draft the center. I feel comfortable though, because most teams operate this way. You have one position on your offensive line that's like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Because there just are not enough good offensive linemen in the league. That's left guard. Whether it's Cole Strange or Layden Robinson or City So comes back, hopefully, to life. One of them.
Or even Caden Wallace. Even like,
Right. Yeah. So, and tackle could be even, again, the guy who suggested drafting 2 in the first round. He might go left tackle 1 and 2, and then everything else. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. And I would not do those in order. Like, this came up on TV last night, the idea of Mason Graham being the number 4 pick. I wouldn't like it, but I would completely get it because he is a consensus top 5 pick in this draft. And if you want difference makers, that is about as close as you can get to threading the needle between best player available and need. Where as much as I'm coming around on Armand Nembu, there's no one that's ranking him ahead of Mason Graham that I respect, and I couldn't even do it myself. So that's how I see it. All right, question number 2. Keith, no, not Keith. Keith reminding me of a Family Guy episode where they needed to break into some sort of safe, and the last step was to answer, what is the least attractive male first name? Keith. They got in. Anyway, Kevin, with Rabel getting rid of players like Milton and David Andrews and Joanne Bentley, what other players on the roster are at risk of going, especially in the receiver group?
I don't know if I want to speculate about other players they could cut, because like almost anyone would be on the list, simply because like this is a new system, new coaching staff. They're looking for different things in players. Like, I personally would look at someone like Jelani Tavai as not looking like a great fit on this defense, but he's also cost prohibitive to cut because of the contract that they just gave him. So maybe they go into training camp with him and say, like, let's see how he looks at linebacker. Let's see what he would look like on the edge. Let's see if we can figure out a way to put him in the defense. Wide receiver is interesting though, because how many guys, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They currently have like 7, let's call them rosterable wide receivers. And they're probably only going to keep 6. So that means that one of Javon Baker, Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte, Pop Douglas, and Jalen Polk will probably be left off the roster. And I don't know, it's too soon to say who that guy is going to be. the guy who's proven the least is Javon Baker, but I think that he's also one of the ones who has got the highest upside. So it's too early to tell. I have no idea who that guy is going to be. We'll know a lot more after the spring, but it does look like there's going to be, at this point, at least one odd man out at wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm with you, and not because I don't want to go out on a limb, or there's just any reason to speculate. I think your top targets, as you pointed out very well, are cost prohibitive. Like Jelani Tavai could be behind Robert Spillane, Jack Gibbons, and Christian Ellis now at inside linebacker. Okay, you're going to play edge. Well, they just added Harold Landry, K'Lavon Chaisson. You're taking a flyer on. Anthony Jennings is there. Is he your fourth at both? Well, you just extended him. Speaking of extensions, Kyle Duggar. Okay, and he was not healthy last year, but you got him as a box safety. Jerome Peppers is a box safety. Marcus Epps, who you just signed, is a box safety. Del Pettis is back. They re-signed Jalen Hawkins. Like, that's a deep group. Where are the positions that you got a surplus? Well, those are the same positions where you just extended guys. There's just not a whole lot there. So I would also say, too, when they talk about it being a fluid passing game, we're like, yeah, really? It is fluid how you feel about the players until you get them in the building day to day and hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
If they can see clearly, for example, which is not to say that I believe this is the case, but you mentioned we're answering about receivers. Kayshon Boutte's just like, this is not my scene. I'm like Joe Milton. I want to go somewhere I can start. Get me out of here. Well, they don't know that until they're around the guy every single day. And again, not saying that's going to happen, but that might spark a change. And right now, they could at least go, Juwan Belly's not a scheme fit. Thank you for your time. We're going to cut you, and you don't even have to come in for an OTA. So that I think April 7th, the closer we get, the less likely it is you'll see any more of those moves. And if you do, it won't be for another few weeks. Jeffrey, what would be a draft night surprise by the Patriots that you think would be great for the team and completely shocking? Trade up, trade down, trade for a player, etc.
If they trade the number 4 overall pick for a player, that would be one hell of a player. So I guess that's what I would say. Like, would that completely shock me? Yes. If they acquire a player worthy of the number 4 overall pick, would also probably be great for the team. So I think that's what I would say.
It's a good answer. We do so much draft stuff by now that, like, Tyler Warren would not be shocking if they traded back and took him, even though you're like, okay, this guy could be your tight end number 3. Like, the A.J. Brown pipe dream has never made sense to me. But if there was a player to build on your dream here that you flip the number 4 pick for, and this would have arguments back and forth, that I think would certainly be good for their immediate window. Long term, you might regret and be like, oh, we still don't have an offensive tackle. If they traded down.
One more, I would say,
yeah.
if they trade down far enough that they could acquire a first-round pick for next year that they think would be relatively high, I think that's also actually, I say that, but like the real draft you probably want to be trading into is 2027. So yeah, I don't know if that would be great for the team. So because I want one of those wide receivers. I want Ryan Williams or the other wide receiver. I can't think of his name right now.
They're both freshmen though.
Yeah.
So that would be 27.
27, yeah.
No, I think that's good. If you traded for a veteran player with the number 4 overall pick, of which, like, Brandon Ayuk's off the table, the Niners just committed to pay him something like $45 million.
It would be like Micah Parsons. Like that's like the level of player it would have to be.
See, we're doing the thing now that other people did much more seriously about Joe Milton. 3rd round pick. Right. It could happen. Make it happen. Just give the number 4 pick up for Micah Parsons. Yeah. And David Mulugele, who's he, by the way? Anyway, all right, there you go. That should be enough for Jeffrey. 2 questions we had about Ashton Gentry, so I'm going to combine them into one. This is from Cody and the Water Boys. Should we start to consider Ashton Gentry at 4? Patriots lack high-end talent. He's got potential to be the next elite running back in the NFL. If the Patriots do not feel Campbell is a Pro Bowl tackle, raise his hand. Should we start to consider Ashton Gentry at number 4?
So I don't love it, but on my last Pat's Chat podcast with Michael Hurley, we talked about, would you rather take Ashton Gentry at number 4 or Tyler Warren at number 4? And I would rather take Ashton Gentry at number 4. And the reason for it, and I'll make this more succinct this time, is that there are more running backs in the NFL that would be worthy of top 5 picks than there are tight ends in the NFL who are worthy of top 5 picks. So I think there's a safety in taking a running back that high. I think it's safer than taking a tight end that high, because there's like basically like 2 or 3 tight ends who would have been worth taking top 10 in the draft. Whereas there's like a handful, let's say like 4 or 5 running backs. So if you really do believe that Ashton Gentry could be that type of player, then maybe he is worth the 4th overall pick. It would give you a boost on the offense, more so than obviously any of the defensive players that they could take. You just truly have to believe in him. And I personally am still not 100% sold on, let's say, like Will Campbell at 4, Armand Membu at 4, Mason Graham at 4, Jalen Walker at number 4. And Ashton Gentry's just like kind of in that mix for me, whereas Tyler Warren would be like a little bit lower.
I would hate the Gentry pick. Full stop. I would take Tyler Warren, and I think your assessment of the current tight ends is fine. But for this team and how it's currently constructed, you have the worst run blocking offensive line in the entire league by PFF and run block win rate. He's going nowhere in the same way that Ramondre Stevenson went nowhere and Antonio Gibson went nowhere. So when you bring in a player like this, it's like when Saquon Barkley went at number 2. How did the Giants do offensively? Aside from 1 year when Brian Dable came in and Jedi mind tricked Daniel Jones into being a good quarterback. Like they were dog crap. What changed for Saquon Barkley was A, of course, he stayed healthy, but B, he goes to the Eagles where he had the best run blocking offensive line in the league. They lead the league at rushing this year. But here's the key difference that tells you rushing success is as much more about the offensive line than it is the running back, not just the Giants-Eagles example. The Eagles were number 1 in the league in yards gained before contact. They were bottom 10 in yards gained after contact. So as great as Saquon Barkley is, you gave any running back that type of room, he can go off. He can have a 2,000-yard season. He can get to daylight and go. That's what happened for him. When he was with the Giants, you can't bring the whole team up because he's being dragged down by the offensive line. So Gentry comes here. He's not able to create in a way that I think Tyler Warren could as a receiver downfield. He's less dependent on that. He just needs Drake May to give him the ball in a tight space. So I'm fully out on Gentry. This is a pick that I would go, I understand the blue chip argument, but that is the most dependent or tied with quarterback position on the team. You need difference makers that can win right away on their own.
I just think the upside of taking a running back there is higher than a tight end. Like you're banking on everything going perfectly for Tyler Warren to be 1,000-yard receiver. Like you're banking on him being Brock Bowers, and he cannot be Kyle Pitts, and he cannot be TJ Hawkinson, and he cannot be Samuel Porter. Like he can't be Noah Fant, all these guys. He has to be basically like one of the greatest first-round tight ends in the history of football to live up to what you need out of that position. And I totally understand you about the run blocking.
Gentry, though, like it can't be Cedric Benson, at 4. You can't be
but
of these
like
teams.
There's so much more history of a running back being successful in the top 5, top 10 than there is with tight ends. It's like it's so rare for a first-round tight end, and like maybe it's him. But I do think that like you can still fix your run blocking, and you've already got Morgan Moses to fix things. You've got Michael Wennon to fix things. I don't know how great Bradbury's going to be. He's better as a run blocker than he is a pass protector. You can still take a left tackle, let's say like trade back in the first round. It's just historically tight ends have not been worth taking in the first round, especially not in the top 10. So you have to bank on him being so much better than everyone else who's gone there. And I don't trust it. I don't trust that that's going to be the case. You can't have him be Kyle Pitts. It's just like, it would be a nightmare scenario.
Yeah, but I just don't see Kyle Pitts' failures as something that, necessarily has to happen to Tyler Warren, a guy who played across all of the formation. And like, look, the difficulty is Gentry is the only other blue chip prospect, full stop, after Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter that we see right now. It doesn't mean other guys are not going to take off. But when you look at the history of those running backs you mentioned in the top 5 or top 10, like Zeke Elliott goes to the Cowboys, have a great offensive line. If you're making an impact, it's because they're ready-made to help you. Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland even, who's projected to go in the top 10, could do that because you're with a good quarterback. Like things are more ready-made for them to succeed in a way that they weren't for Kyle Pitts in Atlanta, playing with Desmond Ridder, right? Which was really the big issue. Oh, and also an offensive coordinator and head coach in Arthur Smith, who was like, I don't care about fantasy football. We're not going to throw to him. Who cares about fantasy football? Throw to him because you're a top 10 pick. They would do that here in New England, even though there's a little bit of redundancy with Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. It's an interesting conversation. I'm glad we disagreed on something here in the podcast finally.
Well, okay. So if you did their history, their career over again, George Kittle, you'd take with the top 5 pick, right?
Oh, yes.
Travis Kelce would, right?
Yeah.
If you did it over again, Brock Bowers, you would last year, right?
Of course.
Would you with Trey McBride? Is Trey McBride a top 5 pick?
Well, look, I think like the running back situation, they're dependent on sometimes the quarterback play. What I would also say,
Trey McBride is a 1,000-yard receiver. He is as productive as a receiving tight end as there is in the NFL right now.
Right. You just have to lead him to the end zone by hand because he just can't find it until it's like week 16. But you know what I mean? Like these guys not only are paired most often with like good quarterbacks, right? Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy, and before that, at least Jimmy Garoppolo was good enough. But they're impacting the run and pass game in the way that the running back is pretty much limited to just running the football. Like the best running backs that you see now are also threats in the passing game. The tight end's doing everything. That to me is also part of this equation. It's not just, the history of the position. It's what are you doing on a down-to-down basis, and what do you need to be supported? If you just need a quarterback, which in the case of the tight end is largely the answer, the Patriots have one. If you need a good run-blocking offensive line, they don't.
It is I don't know. I'm just repeating my point over and over again, but like basically if you take Tyler Warren, number 4 overall, you have to have complete confidence that he is the best tight end in the NFL, because that is what you need by taking a tight end in the top 5 is the best tight end in the NFL. Do you it's just a huge projection to make, because there's so many guys who are good tight ends. Like Sam Laporte's a good tight end, but you still wouldn't take him outside like the top 15. Mark Andrews is a good tight end, but he's still not someone that you would take in like the top 15 to 20 picks. It's just like tight ends are so hard to hit on to be that complete perfect player. I don't know. We disagree, but yeah.
Because you and I agree that this is a bad draft with certain strengths that are running backs, defensive line, and at least a couple tight ends towards the top. Like the fact that, oh my God, it's a number 4 pick, you have to hit on it. Like, yes, I agree. And I would take a different player. Like you and I are not going straight to Ashton Gentry or Tyler Warren to like zoom out and say, this is not our plan A.
Right.
But the fact that the number 4 pick in this year's draft is not certainly equivalent to last year, Marvin Harrison Jr., or even the number 6 pick last year, which was league neighbors. Like, does that soften the idea or your ceiling, this urgency that he has to be some sort of great all-time tight end?
It softens the idea, but it also softens the idea for me for running back. Because, like, not to reiterate the point, but like Saquon Barkley, yes, he was worth the top 5 pick. Derrick Henry would have been worth the top 5 pick. Jonathan Taylor probably would have been worth the top 5 to 10 pick. Jahmyr Gibbs probably would have been worth the top 5 to 10 pick. You can kind of go through the list of these running backs throughout the years. Alvin Kamara would have been worth the top 5 pick in retrospect. There's just so many more running backs that have presented the value on the field of being like that productive, that efficient, that important, that valuable, that most tight ends don't. So it does soften it for me, but it more so softens it for me for Gentry. And I'm not even a big Gentry guy. Like ideally you take someone else there. Ideally, maybe even if you have to take Gentry, you trade back in that spot. But at this point, I think that running back became too devalued. I think it's gained more value. And I think that a running back is more valuable than a tight end at this point in the NFL.
Wow. Okay, so we have like a fundamental disagreement there. But let me ask you this, and then if you want to say one more thing, we'll move on, because of course, as I promised to breeze through these, we like hit stop and then we go in reverse. The Eagles with Saquon Barkley, as you listed a bunch of running backs.
Yeah.
Good run blocking offensive line.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that point.
Okay. Ravens with Derrick Henry.
Well, did the Titans when he was the best running back in the NFL?
Not the last year or two. The years before then with Taylor Lewan and a bunch of other first-round picks, they were great, like 18, 19, and then he falls off as their offensive line falls apart. But then you put him in Baltimore.
Colts didn't have the greatest offensive line last year. Jonathan Taylor is still ripping off 4.7 yards per carry. I mean, yes, they are
first-round picks invested there. Quentin Nelson, Anthony Costanzo going way back. Ryan Kelly is a first-round pick. Like all of those teams, the Saints in Alvin Kamara's best years had the best run blocking offensive lines in the league, or at least top 10, top 12. Patriots are not even out of the bottom 3.
Do the Falcons have one of the best run blocking offensive lines? Like, I don't know.
That I don't know.
So I don't know. It's going to be, and you have players at both positions. You have Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper at tight end. You have Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson at running back. So like neither position is also like a day one need for the Patriots. So that's why it's not ideal. But like if Ashton Gentry could get you 1,500 yards per season and 500 receiving yards, it just like adds so much to your offense.
I just, the ceiling for me would be 1,000 because the reminder Stevenson's not getting to 1,000 the last couple of years and injuries here and there. But that's just the state. Like this is, to me, the running back position. The teams that just added them, right? And we all think, oh my God, like maybe they were devalued a little bit too much, to your point. But the Eagles and Ravens, who are in the playoffs year after year after year, add them because they have the house ready made. If you want to add a parlor or a bar to your house, like that is the final finishing touch to be like, this house rules. But if I am the Patriots and I have a bunch of cement dried in a foundation and some wood up and maybe a window, like I can't throw in a bar if I want to move into this house and have it be ready made like that.
Do teams even add tight ends to get themselves over the hump? Like usually no, right? Like it's a position that you can get by a lot easier.
As a position that impacts everything that you're doing. Like they're involved with your run blocking or pass protecting.
Ones are the best ones. The best ones are, but if you're like, if you're taking Tayler Warren, like accepting the fact that he's going to be a top 10 tight end, then no, he doesn't affect all those things. Like if you take Tayler Warren, expecting him to be Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce, or George Kittle, then like, yes, he would impact everything and he would make that big of an impact. But like, if you're accepting the fact that he's only going to be top 10, then you're getting a guy who gets 800 yards per season, six touchdowns, and contributes as a blocker. And overall, he's not going to get you over the hump one way or the other. So
yeah, I just think he can do his job much more easily than any running back could in New England. And look, if they want to add a running back, which I think they should later in the draft, it's a good class. I'm not going to reach for the top of a good running backs class when I can get a good one later. So that's where I'm at. I think the most important point, especially for all the time that we spent on this unexpectedly, is that they should not take either position. Like you and I just did their top 5 needs, right? And neither of us listed running back or tight end. So this would be a big surprise in reach. This is a worst case scenario. If they have to pick someone or they trade back or whatever, who would you take? We differ. But hopefully neither of them are taken with the top 5 pick because I just don't think it's worth it. All right. Welcome to Cody and the Waterboys. Matt, no one ever mentions Jaheim Bell to pivot back to tight ends. Intriguing skill set that could be a fit into McDaniels' offense. Any word on his development? I've got nothing. I don't. It's no knock on Jaheim Bell, but like his intriguing doesn't really intrigue me a whole lot. He's a 7th round pick who's a little good after the catch, but he didn't see the field. This was a team that was begging him to see the field last year.
He was a 7th round pick. He had 2 catches last year. I love getting in the weeds on some of these guys, but like he would have to show a ton to make any sort of impact whatsoever this year. And he was another guy who coming out of college had some character concerns. So he's got to prove that, I'd say as well.
Yeah. And the contrast, I think, is the thing that helps him most, right? Like he is an F move tight end. They put him in the backfield a little bit last year. I don't know if he was, a guy who was full in, all committed, and sometimes rookies are figuring it out. It's not a knock on him, but to me, like the fact that he's different than Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry as a profile of a player does not suddenly excite me because, the other thing is that they might keep 4 tight ends just because that's how Mike Vrabel wants to run the offense. But he's got to prove it. Like there's no built-in leverage that he has just to make the team.
Yeah.
Theora, what's going on with Marcus Jones? We finally got to the Marcus Jones question. I heard people say he wasn't built for Vrabel's defense, but he's still on the team. Do you expect him to be the starting nickelback?
And at this point, I probably would. He's the most experienced guy outside of Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis. But it all depends on what Mike Vrabel wants out of that nickel role, because like there's not that many undersized slot receivers in the NFL anymore. Like the days of that prototype being Wes Welker, Danny Amendola are kind of gone. So you don't necessarily even want a 5'8" slot cornerback if he has to go up against Alan Lazard in that role. So, whether it's Isaiah Bolden or Alex Austin or someone else, like I think there will probably be some competition at that spot. And that's definitely a position that I could see the Patriots drafting higher than people expect to try to get someone in there who is a little bit more of a bigger body at nickel cornerback.
I was going to knock the Alan Lazard pull, being like, he sucks. And I was like, why is this this image of him pulling away, dragging a Patriots corner stuck in my brain. Oh, that happened in week 3, and it was Jonathan Jones. I think no, it was Alex Austin grabbing at the Under Armour underneath his jersey.
And I think he was catching balls over Marcus Jones in that game too, right?
Yes, that too. So look, I think he right now by default, it's a nickelback. But I would be shocked if the Patriots don't draft another one that's a little bit bigger and fierce and just and not Marcus Jones, which is another guy been on the show, very nice guy, works hard, great asset on special teams. But doesn't fit the prototype that they want in nickel, which is a very important position, as Mike Vrabel said very early on after he took over the Patriots. They'll want to get that right. We got 3 more. Neely, do you see the Pats making a late free agency move for Jedrick Wills? Vrabel had a good look at him in Cleveland. He got a lot of talent, but character flaws. 1-year signing? I say no because he mentions left tackle Jedrick Wills, and that's a transition that Browns tried to make for years, and the guy just outright got benched last year. I think if they wanted to do it, they would have done it already.
Yeah, he was also still dealing with injuries when free agency began. So I think that would have to be a major sticking point, is to know that he's fully healthy. And once again, I don't think that you want to make that projection of signing him and then also moving him to left tackle, because you kind of, he'd be a right tackle, and that spot, there's a little bit of backlog now already on the team of guys who would probably be in front of Jedrick Wills. At least Morgan Moses would be.
Yeah. All right, from Sean, as a percentage, what is the likelihood that the Patriots land Travis Hunter, either because he falls to them or they make a deal with the team ahead of them?
I don't know what the odds are, but I did want to ask you this. If the Giants are sitting there at number 3 and they are okay with taking Shedeur Sanders, but know that they've got some leverage, and they say to the Patriots, like, hey, you want to come up to 3 and take Travis Hunter? Is that worth the 3rd round pick to you? I'll say yes, because I think that there's enough of a drop off for the Patriots from Travis Hunter down to the next best guy at 4 that I would like to take my chances on Travis Hunter to be a wide receiver in this league. And I think, to me, that's worth a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would certainly prefer the later 3rd round pick. And if we can work something out, that now that the Patriots have an extra 5th, we'll give you a 5th, we'll give you a future 4th, or 5th and the 4th, whatever. I would prefer to keep those 3rd rounders, because they're going to need them to move.
I think it would just take more than a 4th and a 5th. It would either take a future 3rd or a 3rd, I think, in that spot.
Okay, so in this case, again, the only hesitancy, because the ideal Patriots draft plan, and this is something you can put in Sharpie, whatever, permanent, you could carve this into stone, is Travis Hunter at 4. And then you trade back into the 1st round to get a Josh Simmons or a Josh Connerly, or pick a left tackle in that range. You need a 3rd round pick to make that move up, and then some, maybe into the mid early 20s. I would still say yes, because when we talk about Travis Hunter, and I have an email from someone that I still have to get back to, is like, oh, he might not be an all-pro receiver, blah, blah, blah. The Charles Woodson, Champ Bailey comparisons are nice, but they're not accurate. This guy was top 5 in all of college
touchdowns.
football. 96 catches, 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns as receiver, and he was the best defender in football.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the award. He got the Blindikoff and the Bednark. Okay. This is an unprecedented player who, if you give him the time just to focus at receiver, who's got a great varied release package, good feel for zone coverage, unbelievable natural athlete. Yeah, I think I would do that, but I'm not. It's not going to be a 2nd. It's definitely not going to be a future 2nd, future 1st. Just say, yeah, we'll come up. We'll slide with you. We'll give you an extra 3rd. Fine. I think that's a good question. All right. Last one. Lawrence. He asked this before the press conference. He wanted to know if Josh is going to talk about the new offense. Has to be his version of the McVay offense, right? There are no former Patriots assistants on his staff.
I don't know if it's going to be his version of the Sean McVay offense. I would be pretty surprised by that. I think it's going to be a version of the Josh McDaniels offense with some outside influence.
Yeah, I think that's clear. Some motion, some personnel packaging, the naming of it, some footwork stuff. Maybe I think what you'll see is more moving pockets. If I had to guess, is things are fluid. What happens next? But no, this will still be a Josh McDaniels, the bones of the offense, which they have to teach something. It'll look familiar. Quick game, under center, play action, like that. That stuff will be the same. All right, we have gone overtime with an unexpected Ashton Gentry full on back and forth, which was fun. That Travis Hunter question is a really good one. I'm going to be thinking about that after we hang up. But you got to go. I've got to go. We will hear from some defensive assistants tomorrow, which is Friday. If anyone wants to join the show, we should have done this off the top, but people have stuck around. If you want to join the show, reply to my tweet with the link that says donate here to LLS and Doug's campaign, Visionaries of the Year. $10 or more gets you on the show for 5 to 10 minutes. We will talk about whatever you want. If you don't want to be on the show, but you want to get your questions answered and you like beer, or you like a signed Mike Vrabel football or Red Sox tickets or a David Pastrnak jersey or a signed Kendrick Bourne football, we're having an event in Weymouth, April 17th. It's the Thursday before Easter. Again, Thursday, April 17th, 7:30 at Vitamin C, SEA Brewery, Vitamin C Brewery. Come out, see me, Doug.
In Weymouth.
In Weymouth. Mark Daniels and Vitamin C Brewery in Weymouth, April 17th. It's a Thursday night. It's going to be a ton of fun. All the money goes towards the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and the campaign that Doug and his wife have going. And I'm helping out with in the way that you get an A in the group project, but you didn't really do anything. And so just come out. This is going to be an awesome night. You can buy tickets at his Twitter, my Twitter, Fitzy's Twitter. What did I leave out?
Nothing. No, nothing. You can also go to princesshellyforever.com if you aren't in the area, can't attend the event, but still want to contribute, still want to donate. You can go to links in Andrew's Twitter to donate to his team page as well. So any of the, any donations, attending the event, getting on the show, all of that, everything goes to a good place.
Yeah, this is money that goes to the best place possible. People fighting leukemia, lymphoma. This goes to cancer research at a time that cancer research is being cut back. So when you think about the importance of that dollar, it's never meant more. And this is the best place possible, especially in Hallie's honor. All right. I will see you tomorrow, and we will be back next week. 2 more episodes. And I want the draft to be here. This is about to be Tony Pollard season, all due respect. But we're
3
here.
more weeks.
To talk about them. 3 more weeks. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. No more rambling on. Thank you very much, my man.